All right, so what we are going to do today, ladies, we are going to talk about trauma and dating, all right? Because many women don't realize the connection that actually exists between the two. Obviously, I do because it's what I do, and it's one of the things, or it's the main thing, should I say, that I am actually all about helping ladies with, is realizing how trauma, specifically unhealed and unresolved trauma, is affecting their dating life, interfering with the love life, their desires and things like that. I realize that a lot of times women think that they just have a man problem, but truth be told, it's oftentimes a trauma problem. One of the verses that I had shared earlier this week in the group was Isaiah 61:1. I love how it talks about how God came to heal the brokenhearted and set the captives free. And what I want you to realize is that this includes your love life as well. There are some things that you need to be healed from. There are some areas in which you are still brokenhearted, and God sent his son for you to be healed and delivered from those things. There are some things that have been tied to your past pains and your heartbreaks and your trauma that have kept you in bondage, and you don't even realize that you are not experiencing freedom, and I want you to experience that. So let me ask you, have you ever wondered why your relationships might feel like a repeat of the last one? I can tell you, as I always do, I'm very honest, right? And very transparent when it comes to my ladies, is that I realized, I say recently, but here over the past couple of years, it took me a minute where I really sat and realized something. And hello, Thunder. I realized that there was definitely patterns in my relationships, my romantic relationships. And what I realized, furthermore, was that all of my past relationships had consisted of me being in these situations more than anything, right? Of being with a man, things would start off amazing. These men would say all of the right things. So in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, this is it. This is going to be my person. I found, my happily ever after all. So I would start people pleasing a little bit. I would start over giving. I would start becoming very, which, we're supposed to be selfless, but it's like I was beyond selfless. I really wanted to show these men, which I didn't realize this is what I was doing, but I really wanted to show these men how amazing I was and how awesome I was and all of these different things. So I did everything early on in the beginning. Relationships are supposed to be give and take. I did a whole lot of giving. Those men did a whole lot of taking. Of course, looking back, I realized that none of those relationships were actually mutually beneficial, but they highly benefited the man who was on the other side of it. And all of those relationships, they went the same way, where it was one of those things where I started to realize at some point that I was neglected. My needs were not being met. I wanted and needed a little bit more. Once I would then start becoming vocal about those things, then all of a sudden the men had issues, or there was things that they wanted to reveal, confess, talk about, share insight as to their excuses and whatever the case might be. At some point, I am the reason why they were not doing certain things. I was the reason why those men were not showing up. I was the reason why those men were not committing, right? So it's like at some point I would then decide, you know what, I know my worth. I'm not sticking around, or I'm not dealing with this and all of these things. I would eventually walk away, leave the relationship, always leave the door open just a little bit, but I wanted to show them that I was not one to be played with, thought that I was making a point, whatever the case might be. Every single one of those men went on to either commit to, or propose to, or even marry the woman that came after me. Now, I'll be honest and also say, no, I'm not saying this as a flex, but also all of those men at some point would reach back out, or they tried to find a way to stay in communication with me and still reach out and still tell me all the things that I wanted to hear, which ultimately they were seeing if I was still stupid. Because yes, there was a time that I was stupid. There was a time that my trauma absolutely had me stupid when it came to my love life. And yes, I love those men, even though it was not necessarily a healthy love. It was coming from a place of me, myself, not realizing that I was dealing with something I talk about a lot, which is the self-love deficit disorder. So I sat back and I realized that all of my relationships were looking like and feeling like a repeat of the last one. And I went through a period of also trying to figure out, naturally, like, man, like, what is wrong with me? What did I not have? What did I do wrong where they did not want to be with me, but they were with the woman that came after me? It was a pattern that I had, right, of dating the same kind of men, but it was just different bodies at the end of the day and different names ultimately. This is something that you may or may not be able to relate to. Either way, I'm here on today because I want to ensure that you stop allowing trauma to lead your dating life. I want to ensure that you know what it looks like and what it's going to take ultimately for you to trauma-proof your love life. And what you first have to start off doing is you have to recognize how trauma shows up in dating. The first thing being pattern repetition. This is where you are dating different men, but with the same wounds in a new body. You have the same wounds. The men, they are all different. They are in a different body. They are in a new body again. They have a different name, whatever, but it all looks the same because your nervous system has now gotten accustomed to dating and doing things the same way. Maybe you found yourself in some fear cycles because with me, I was repeating patterns, but it was also an issue of fear that had me repeating those cycles. Fear of abandonment, fear of being alone, fear of never being married or in a relationship, fear of being rejected. So it's why I would give so much of myself. It's why I did so much because I did not want to be alone forever. Like I was sick of being single and I didn't realize outside of wanting companionship, that's one thing. But when you are desperate for it or when you are lonely, all of those things which tie to trauma in some way, it causes you to do things on a completely different level and it leads to clinginess or being overbearing, or maybe it even leads to, like I did, lashing out at some point when it's kind of like, wait a minute, well, I want to think about my needs too. Now actually, let me actually go ahead and speak up. But the men are kind of like, whoa, this wasn't an issue in the beginning, like, or where is this coming from? And that's when the men will start labeling you as all of these different things. And it's simply because you're realizing things are a little bit unbalanced. You're realizing you don't want it to look like this. You're finding the nerve and the audacity to actually speak up for yourself, but it's something you didn't do in the beginning. So in the eyes of the men, you're the one with the issue. You're the one that's giving them pause. You're the one that they're not sure about, or you're reminding them of an ex, all because you're finally speaking up for yourself. So pattern repetitions, fear cycles, trauma shows up in dating. Also sometimes overcompensation. Like I said, a lot of times trauma survivors or people who have any type of unresolved trauma, they overgive, they people please, they settle, they ignore red flags just to avoid rejection. There's this thing that trauma does where it whispers, you're safer repeating what you know than risking something new. This is how you get caught in the cycles and the patterns, because it's like, even though they don't end the way that you want them to end, it's still what you are used to enduring. Now, of course, there's the part of you that's hoping things are going to turn out different. That is where the low self-worth comes from and the lack of self-love, because you're hoping and waiting that even though the red flags are there, even though this man has already shown his true colors, you're hoping he's going to change for you, or you're hoping that he's going to want to be with you, that he's going to choose you, or whatever else the case might be. But overall, what trauma is telling you is that it is best for you to just keep doing what you know versus risking something completely new. This is why, for a lot of you, it's been so easy for you to date men, date men who showed a lot of the same signs, even though they were unhealthy. But it's like when a guy came along that was actually maybe ready to, wine and dine and be romantic, and it was going to be a healthy kind of love, that seem foreign to you because you are already used to the cycles and the patterns of dysfunction ultimately. So it's like right now, trauma ultimately sets your GPS in some kind of way, and it will keep rerouting you to the same destination even when you are trying to go somewhere new. If you do not work through your trauma, nothing is going to change. It is all going to look the same, right? So you want to do whatever is necessary to reframe the narrative, because what unresolved trauma does, it creates all of these false beliefs. It'll tell you, I'm not enough. Men can't be trusted. Love is supposed to hurt. Love will always hurt. All men cheat, whatever. And what those beliefs do is they actually shape your dating lens and your decisions. You are going to date and make decisions based off of those things that you already believe to be true, right? This is why Romans 12:2 is something that is so important, okay? The renewing of the mind is necessary in order for love to look differently for you. When I work with my breakout clients one-on-one, this is a process that we go through. This is why this is no longer a 12-week program, but a 6-month coaching program, because it takes work to really go through what needs to be done. And truth be told, I even just recently introduced a 1-year program, because some women, some of you have, realized that, hey, I need a little bit more than even 6 months, because it is a process to renew your mind when you have been believing the same things for so many different years, right? So instead of, you have to, when I talk about reframing, right, you have to get to that point of saying, maybe for you it's going to be, instead of saying, I attract nothing but liars, you're saying, hey, I am discerning and God aligns me with the truth. It is okay to acknowledge the mistakes and the patterns and the cycles and the limiting beliefs, and then saying, instead of repeating this, instead of disclaiming this or disclosing this, I am going to make sure that I flip this into something positive that is also going to affect me, of the things that are going to affect and change the way that I date and the way that I do relationships. You want to be mindful of what it is that you are ultimately giving power to. So reframing and rewiring after trauma is you renewing your mind by being intentional about the things that you are speaking, thinking, and believing. Reframing does not mean you are ignoring the pain, right? I have 2 clients right now that I'm also, 2 of the clients that I have in my breakout program, things that they are currently experiencing because of past relationships. It's the same thing that I tell them. It is a matter of, it's not saying that your feelings are not hurt. It is not invalidating your experience. It's not invalidating those emotions, but you are not going to get to where you need and want to be. You are not going to get to where you need and want to be if you are not intentional about changing your thought process and the things that you are speaking, even if and even when you don't feel and believe those things at the moment. When those thoughts come up, what is it that you can say to shut those things down? Even the Bible says, take captive every thought and make it obedient to Christ, right? So when things come in your mind about a past relationship or about your single season, how you're feeling right now about men, love, dating, loneliness, whatever, you can acknowledge that, but I need you to reframe it and say something completely different. After reframing, you want to get to the point where you are resetting with the proper tools. Because unless you are really intentional about the affirmations and the declarations and the thoughts and things like that, even with that, sometimes it takes a little bit more, right? I mean, this is why you can have church and a therapist, right? Like, this is why some people have therapists and a coach. Like, you can have more than one tool that is going to help you. But some of the basic tools that I will tell you here before I get off of here, one of the tools is going to be awareness. You want to ensure that you notice your triggers. The thing is, I feel like there's this false belief. There's this myth surrounding healing where people think they're going to get to this point where absolutely nothing bothers them. They're going to be completely like 100% good to go. And yes, some people are like that, right? But what I know to be true, and in the psychology standpoint of certain things, is that I always try to watch how I word this, right? Because what I know about my God, I do know that Jehovah Rapha is a healer, and we can be delivered and healed from any and everything, right? But let's be real. There are also certain things physically that, yeah, maybe we went through, and whether it was a surgery or some type of treatment, there might still be something there that affects us in the physical nature, right? It might now, even though we're no longer dealing with XYZ, it might be a reason why we can't move our arm a certain way, or why we walk a certain way. There might be a scar that is present, or whatever the case. It might be a medication that you have to stay on for the rest of your life, even though you're not dealing with that particular condition. It is no different from emotional and mental disorders as well. There are things that you can absolutely be healed from and delivered from. However, there might be some things that are present, because even psychologically speaking, and again, I know what Jesus can do, and I know that this is not a one size fits all that affects everybody, but it is often said and believed that a person is never 100% free from abandonment issues. And I don't like that, nobody, no person, 100%, whatever. But in a lot of cases, that is the truth, okay? That when it comes to abandonment issues there, and that fear of abandonment, that it's always going to be there. The thing is awareness and noticing the triggers. Just because an issue might affect you doesn't mean that it has to dictate your life. Doesn't mean that you can go around now using something as an excuse or justification as to why your thoughts, words, and or actions are what they are. Oh, well, my daddy left, so you don't know what I've been through, or I have abandonment issues, this is why I do this. No, it is up to you to notice your triggers. So awareness is going to be one of those tools for you. If you're dating a guy and he gets silent or whatever the case might be, and it triggers panic inside of you, that's not just clingy behavior, that's trauma. But now once you have noticed that it's doing something inside of you, it's saying, okay, now what am I going to do about it? It's not saying, okay, well, now that I'm aware this is where it's coming from, so this is why I need to send him a long text, blow up his phone, call him and go off. No, it's not justifying, but it's up to you to be aware of it, notice it, and then decide how you are going to respond from it. Another tool, another healing tool is going to be boundaries, because far too often, a lot of women who have gone through any type of trauma, they blur boundaries just to keep the peace, right? But healing means you protect your peace. And that would mean also as well, like you're going to have some boundaries at the end of the day. Too many women, because of trauma, again, a lot of trauma leads to abandonment issues. It leads to an insecure attachment style. And a lot of people in that category, they struggle with forming boundaries. Even if it's something in their head that they knows that matters to them, they struggle with communicating or relaying that boundary because they're afraid of how the other person is going to respond. They don't know how that person is going to perceive this new thing that they are now saying is necessary for their peace of mind. But healing is saying, hey, I'm doing this for me. I don't care how it's affecting someone else. This is necessary for my well-being. So having boundaries is a tool. It is a healing tool for you, and it is going to be a part of you resetting. Having some type of support system. Healing happens in community, right? Again, I am a coach. If you are looking for a coach, message me and we can talk about which program currently actually has openings. Maybe you want to ensure that you have a therapist, but like I always tell people, therapy only works to the extent that you are honest, open, and vulnerable with your therapist. Maybe for you it could be a small group at your church, a Bible study, a woman's group, starting a group, actually, going out, doing things, whatever, and finding like-minded females and building those friendships. Connections are necessary, and healing happens in community. You need to have some type of support system, even if it's at least a best friend, a sister, your mama, somebody that you can be honest with about some of the dating and past relationships and things like that. someone who can hold you accountable, someone you can be vulnerable with and tell them some of those mistakes and letting them know where those things came from, so that that person understands you a little bit better and can truly help you when it comes to accountability and having that community. You don't trauma-proof your love life by accident. Trauma-proofing your love life is something you do on purpose. So those are the ways that you can trauma-proof your love life in order to get to where you need and want to be. You have to recognize how trauma shows up in dating. You need to reframe the narrative, and then you reset with the healing tools that are going to get you to where you need and want to be, okay? You are not too far gone. You are not too broken for love, okay? Your trauma does not cancel your worthiness. Like I said, that Isaiah 61:1. Remember, freedom and healing are available. You just have to want it, and you have to be intentional, and you need to invest in it in whatever way that is going to look like for you. Whether it is investing time, whether it is investing money, whatever the case might be, do what is necessary so that you can be free in this season. Before I hop off, let me also say another way to invest if you did not see. The Stop the Trauma workshop is coming back. That is going to be September 20th. If you want to get real about stopping the cycles and the drama and the patterns that are tied to your trauma, maybe you're curious as to how trauma is still affecting you, because what I've realized working with women is that trauma shows up in many ways, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically, all of these things. So I want to talk a little bit about what trauma is, how it's been affecting you, how it's been interfering with your dating and love life, a little bit on that, but just looking at your life overall. And I'm going to give you the tools that are necessary for you to stop the trauma so that you can be free. Understand this. Healing is the most attractive thing that you'll ever wear, okay? It draws in the kind of love that you were created for, the kind that you were meant to experience. So let's do something about it. Again, message me so we can find out how we can work together if you're wanting some one-on-one or group coaching help. Or again, you can also sign up for the Stop the Trauma workshop, www.thenewlovecollective.com/STT, all lowercase for Stop the Trauma. I hope to see you in there, but either way, have a great weekend, be blessed, and I hope to talk to you soon. Bye.